You're sitting on your couch right now, or maybe your bed, staring at a ceiling you've memorized. You've already scrolled through everything, watched everything, replied to everything. And still there it is, that hollow, restless feeling that has no name and no obvious cure. Boredom. It feels modern, it feels like a product of too many notifications and not enough meaning. But what if boredom is one of the oldest things about you? Your ancestors felt it too. Not just occasionally, not just on rainy days. They felt it constantly, in ways that shaped your brain, in ways that still run underneath everything you do today. To understand boredom, you first have to understand what ancient human life actually looked like. Not the version from movies, not spears and mammoth hunts every single day. The real version. Archaeological records and ethnographic studies of modern hunter-gatherer populations tell a different story. Researchers like Daniel Lieberman at Harvard, who spent decades studying human evolution and physical behavior, have noted that hunter-gatherers typically worked somewhere between 4 and 6 hours a day to meet their caloric needs. The rest of the time was not scheduled, not filled, not productively optimized. The rest of the time just existed. That means your ancient ancestor, maybe sitting in the shade near a river somewhere in East Africa, spent long stretches of the day with nothing pressing to do. No meetings, no errands, no content queue, just time, and a brain that didn't know what to do with it. And here is where it gets strange, because the human brain is not built for stillness. It is not built to be idle. Neuroscientists call the brain's resting state the default mode network, a system first mapped in depth by Marcus Reichel at Washington University in the early 2000s. When your brain has nothing external to focus on, this network activates automatically. It starts generating, simulating, wandering. Your ancient ancestor sitting by that river wasn't staring blankly into nothing. Their brain was running, telling itself stories, imagining scenarios, revisiting the past, projecting into the future. In other words, they were daydreaming. And daydreaming, it turns out, is not laziness. It is one of the most cognitively expensive things your brain does. Studies from psychologists at the University of California have shown that the default mode network, when active during apparent rest, consumes nearly as much energy as focused attention tasks. Your brain doesn't power down when you're bored. It fires up a different engine. So what did ancient humans actually do with the unstructured hours? They played, real play, the kind with no outcome and no point. Anthropologist Stuart Brown, who founded the National Institute for Play and spent years cataloging play behavior across species and cultures, found evidence that play is not a luxury behavior. It is a biological drive that predates complex human culture. Ancient humans wrestled, chased each other, invented games with sticks and rocks, created rhythms by hitting things together. Not to train for battle, not to prepare for the hunt, just because movement and novelty and social interaction during unstructured time felt good. That feeling was data. It was your brain rewarding you for using your time in ways that would eventually produce real-world advantages. The wrestling practice made you stronger. The rock games built spatial reasoning. The rhythms created social bonds. But none of that was the reason they did it. They did it because boredom, left unaddressed, becomes a signal you cannot ignore. Boredom is not a passive state. Research by psychologists Sandy Mann and Rebecca Cadman at the University of Central Lancashire has shown that boredom is neurologically uncomfortable, that it triggers a kind of mild distress response designed to push you out of inactivity. It is your brain's way of telling you that the current situation is not using your potential. It is an evolutionary alarm, a nudge from a very old system that says, there is something better you could be doing with this moment. Your ancestors listened to that alarm. When they were bored, they talked, not small talk, not the kind of conversation you have when you're half watching something else. Real conversation, long, slow, winding conversation around fires that burn through the night. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar at the University of Oxford, famous for his research into social cognition and the evolution of language, argues that a significant portion of early human conversation was what he calls social grooming, which is the verbal equivalent of picking parasites off each other's fur. Stories about other people, shared memories, gossip even. That might sound trivial. It was anything but. Gossip, in the technical anthropological sense, is how early human groups maintained social contracts. It is how reputation worked. It is how alliances formed. When ancient humans were bored and turned to each other, they were doing the deep maintenance work of the social fabric that kept their group alive. Your brain still does this. When you're understimulated and you reach for your phone and open your contacts and send a meaningless message to someone, you are doing something ancient. You are activating the same social grooming circuitry that kept your ancestors alive. The content has changed, the wiring has not. They also made things, not because they were trying to be productive, not because some innovation guru told them to create, because making something with your hands during unstructured time feels satisfying in a way that is almost impossible to explain with logic. The oldest known beads made for decoration date back approximately 130,000 years, found in North Africa. The oldest musical instruments are flutes carved from bird bone and mammoth ivory, dating to 40,000 years ago in what is now Germany. The oldest cave paintings in sites like Lascaux in France and Altamira in Spain were made by people who were not documenting hunts for practical record keeping. They were expressing something, reaching for something. They were bored, and they responded to that boredom by making the world slightly more beautiful than it had been before they started. There is something worth sitting with there. Because modern life has created a new relationship with boredom, one that is almost entirely defined by escape. You now have access to an infinite stream of stimulation, always available, always one tap away. Psychologist Mary Helen Imordino-Yang at the University of Southern California has found that adolescents and adults who never experience genuine unstructured downtime, who never allow the default mode network to run without interruption, show measurable reductions in self-reflection, empathy, and narrative identity formation. In other words, when you never let yourself be truly bored, you become slightly less able to understand yourself. Your ancient ancestors didn't have the option to escape boredom, so they transformed it. They turned empty time into conversation, into play, into art, into the invisible infrastructure of community and meaning. And across the long arc of human evolution, those responses to boredom, those specific ways of using unstructured time, are part of what built the mind you have now. The restlessness you feel when there's nothing to do, that's ancient. The urge to move, to talk, to make something, to tell a story, that's ancient too. The question is just what you do with it. Tonight, when you feel that hollow familiar pull, when the ceiling has nothing new to offer and the scroll has run dry, you might notice something. Underneath the discomfort of boredom, there is a kind of invitation, the same one your ancestors felt sitting by the river. Not an invitation to fill the time, an invitation to use it. That restless, hollow feeling you've been carrying around, it turns out it's one of the oldest things about you.